Welcome back. Second half, Cannabis Conversations. I am, as always, your lucky and grateful host, Sean Welsh. For those of you wondering, my shirt, what it says is, everything I love to do is illegal. So I know that this came up the last time I wore this, so I'm just going to let people know if you can't read it. That's just the reality of my life because I live in a prohibition state, as I've mentioned. So this is still illegal to me. Even this conversation sometimes feels like I'm not allowed to have it. But damn it, we will, and we will continue to do it. The second half is going to be all about the integrity of cannabis. But before I get to that, when we're talking about integrity, few know it better than King Solomon Nutrients. I'm telling you, Damien has been doing this for 20 years. He uses science, people. And I know there's a lot of questions around science, but I don't question science. That's why I don't question Damien and his team. They get the job done. Hydro, soil, no difference. The results will always be the best. So head over to ksolomonag.com and learn what it takes to be the best with the easy two-part system. As I like to say, if you're not down with the king, you need to be. All right, so Carl, you teased us here with the idea of integrity in cannabis. During the break, we started to delve into a little bit of integrity and some of the things that I do in the background. So I have my opinions, but as customary, the guest will kick us off. Where do we begin the discussion as far as you're concerned with integrity in cannabis?
So I think maybe let's go two different ways. I think maybe two things, right? So you have the hemp stuff, right? So hemp-derived D8 or hemp-derived D9 and then conversions to D8 and all of that stuff. And then also remediation.
Okay. These are two things I have a lot of opinions on living where I live.
Okay, right on.
Yeah. So let's go. Here we go. Hemp, as far as I'm concerned with this, it has confused the market from a couple of different perspectives. Okay. I'm a consumer first. I am in the background of cannabis as I have been for a decade and a half. I do not make a living in cannabis. I have stated this so you guys can stay out of my DMs. Tell me to go get a life. I've been doing this before most of you even thought about doing it. I just haven't been doing it publicly because I make a living doing something else. However, being a consumer first, living in a prohibition state, the hemp stuff just confuses the fuck out of people. And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying it's confusing because I got people telling me at my local bowling alley, hey, Sean, have you been in the new dispensary? I'm sorry, what did you say? The new dispensary, have you been there? It's down the street. The fuck you have been to a new dispensary? You haven't been to one of those. And then an argument ensues like, I don't know what I'm talking about, right? And so and you see pot leaves on the buildings and you see the pot leaf on the sign out front. The kid's even spinning a pot leaf sign. And I live in a prohibition state. I think to myself, what the fuck? How did we get here? And if I didn't, and I think this might be a little bit of your perspective, Carl, if I, which I am, invested in businesses, in cannabis space, in states with hemp and hemp-derived drinks and all of this, and to your point, I think, which would be mine, I paid a lot of money for my license. I paid a lot of money for everything I got going on here. The fact that you can just roll into the liquor store and put something that has the same logo, that has the same, I don't give a shit what the contents are. None of that matters anymore. What matters is what you present to the consumer. And that's where my trouble lies, is that I think there has to be a division. And so my wife and I went to our first Cannabis Expo here in Chicago at the NECAN Chicago here recently. Okay, Carl, and there was a conversation happening about this, and I stand in the back of every room. I don't sit down. I like to move around, and I'm watching this. These are people in the stage that are watching this, that are arguing with each other. And I wish I could make a meme out of it. I told my wife, just put hemp over that lady's head and put cannabis over that dude's head. Because this is what's happening. The arguments were and it wasn't even their speaking engagement. They had dominated the argument because the hemp people feel this way, the cannabis feel this way. But let me tell you, it doesn't matter. The fucking consumer is confused and they don't understand which way is up. And by the way, it's still just the same fucking plant. So stop trying to make some division as far as the consumer is concerned. Carl, I told you I had opinions. It's probably more than you bargained for. Am I headed in a direction you were headed, or have I gone somewhere else?
So let me answer your question with a story. So I have the best business partner that anyone could ever ask for. And I am thankful that we're both crazy, but we have never been crazy on the same day. And that's been our secret to, and so I have seen Jesse furious a bunch of times, but this level of furious 4 times. He comes into, we still had an office, and he comes into my office, Sean. I mean, rip shit mad, slams down this dram of gummies on my desk and starts yelling. And I feel like I'm 12 and my dad's yelling at me. What did I do, Jesse? And so apparently he was at a barbecue, and he lives in a little town rural town called Rochester, Mass, maybe about 20 minutes from here. And one of his friend's kids works at the local market. So there's no supermarket, there's no gas stations. I don't think there's a bank. It's a little town. And his friend's son comes up to him and says, at the barbecue, that they're now selling cannabis gummies at this market. And Jesse's like, oh, you mean CBD? He's like, no, THC. And Jesse's like, oh, you mean Delta 8? He's like, no, Delta 9. And so the next morning, Jesse goes in right before he comes into my office screaming at me. And he went and purchased, and it's from a company called PrimaBee. They're based out of Chatham, Mass. They're Delta 9 hemp-derived gummies. You click on scan the COA to go to a website, and it's just a general COA from Colorado from a couple of years ago. I mean, it's not that specific. He bought it with a credit card. His kid could have been in there with him. He could have bought alcohol with it in a candy bar and all of it. And, we reach out to the commission, and effectively they turn it on us, asking questions. Was this an employee who bought it? Effectively, they have no jurisdiction outside. And so there was that. And so when that happened, there's a group in Massachusetts that's looking to change some legislation, and we were part of that. And as part of us being part of that, there was a provision banning the sale of intoxicating cannabinoids outside of registered stores. And it was taken out, and we got a little aggressive and got it put back in. And once it was put back in, I made a LinkedIn post thanking this group for doing this once they submitted it. The Boston Globe reached out, then Chris Ferroni from Talking Joints, and that started this whole thing.
Cycle of conversation around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
in the same.
Sure.
I think actually my LinkedIn post is the first mention of a ban on this. And really why, I mean, look, I can look at this 2 ways. I can look at this as a business owner where we're paying, 280E, all of the stuff, the taxes, the licenses and all of it. And then, right across the street from where our store is, there's a shopping plaza, and there's a liquor store that was selling the Cheech and Chong beverages that is not compliant to state code on the cannabis side. That also, if you're not familiar with, and would be a wonderful guest, Dr. Jeff Rawson from the Cannabis Science Testing Institute in Mass.
Jeff, yeah, he's on my, so I keep a running list of next season, because this season I have booked out, but he's literally like in the top 3. I'm hoping it's always a hope people actually accept, so that I have a running list. He's on it for sure.
I will put in a good word for you. Jeff is a wonder. He's the best.
I love it.
So he is working with Orange Photonics, who have those little HPLC boxes.
Yep.
And he has tested a whole bunch of these cannabis.
Yeah, he gets a lot of shit for what's the quality of the testing. He uses a consistent mechanism because he's a doctor, so he knows how to A/B test shit. And people always just get into the granular details. And I find when people start to pick apart the details, is because they've already accepted the major part as fact. So now it's about trying to pick apart whatever it is that you can't find, when you're like, well, fuck, then what about this, like the minutia that you're like, don't have time, don't care. I mean, I work for the 98%, not the 2. That's how I operate.
Yep.
So
Jeff, I mean, look, he worked at CERN. I mean, he has, I think PhD at Duke, postdoc at Harvard. I mean, he's a scientist who got into cannabis.
This isn't some guy who's like a home grower who decided to, get a PhD and now he calls himself a doctor. That's not what this is. This is a dude who is a doctor because he's a fucking scientist. Mm-hmm. So yeah, man, and he's so cool about the way he handles it. Some of the responses that he gives, I always want to be like, man, Dude, let me give you my response. See if this dude ever says another fucking word to you. But you know, he's super cool about it. So yeah, all right. So
but he tested. He tested separately. We don't work with him, but he's a friend, a dear friend. But he tested a whole bunch of these beverages, and the one thing that stands out is what's on the label isn't what's in the thing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and this will also sort of lead into the remediation stuff. But like, so based on my rough calculations, between 62 and 65% of the flower in Massachusetts is remediated. Whether inline, meaning it's just the company produces the flower, puts it in the rad source, willow, whatever the things are, and then sends it for testing, or once it fails, then has it tested, then has it remediated and then retested.
Yeah.
The fact, so our store does not sell any remediated product. And as a purchaser, I can see the exclamation point in the metric tag that shows that something's been remediated. As a matter of fact, as a product manufacturer, we can't even mix a batch of remediated flour with non-remediated flour if we want to run it to distillate. Like, we can't even combine those tags. So as a buyer, we're allowed to see this, and there are a bunch of stores in the state that won't take any product that has that exclamation point anywhere in that metric sequence, right? But the customer doesn't have the right to see it. And just for me, given that, and maybe one of your listeners knows that there's something different, but from every smart person I've spoken to, there have been no peer-reviewed studies done on the long-term effects of smoking remediated products. So, and Jeff actually explained this to me because, you know, when there's all this, you know, a radiated weed, he's a scientist. He's like, that's nonsense. It's not, the weed doesn't glow. That's not what that is. But, you know, and I pushed back, and there was one day he's like, you know, Carl, that's, you know, this radiation stuff is nonsense. And it was like, but Jeff, hold on. When I smoke a joint from an outdoor grow, that even though maybe the terpene count is technically high on the thing, I can taste the difference. Like, I could tell you every single time if product has been remediated. Like, and I blind tasted this with other people. And so he's like, well, yeah. He's like, so what remediation does, it just kills the activity in this. And Jeff, if I'm dumbing this down, I'm making you sound stupid, I apologize. You said it really smart. I'm just whatever. But so what he said was, he's like, you know, it kills the fast moving cells, sort of like, I guess, chemo kills cancer, but it doesn't remove the dead bodies. It doesn't remove the stress that it put on the plant. It doesn't remove the effluent that came out of this stuff being on there. And so there have been long-term studies done on what happens when you kill powdery mildew on strawberries or whatever, and the long-term effects of eating that. But there's been nothing done on the long-term effects of smoking it. And so what I was sort of hypothesized is, or postulate is, like, if as a buyer I have the right to know this, why doesn't the consumer have the right to know this?
Well, that's the point here, Carl. Like, I mean, what do you mean? Like, again, and part of this is because of the lack of. So, all right, on this season, there you should check out the episode with a young woman named Kim Stuck. Okay, Kim Stuck is like she wrote the first cannabis state regulation form in Colorado in like 2013 with legal rec. Like, she's literally at the forefront of all things regulation. I think they used to call her the weed whacker because she'd come into grows like that and she'd just say, tear it all down. You don't have the right documentation. I can't tell where this went wrong. So just get rid of your entire grow. It all fails. Don't even worry about remediation. You're so far behind that it doesn't matter. And her point was that as much as cannabis feels like this over-regulated industry, once it becomes federally legal, then it falls under like manufactured food, which she believes is the most scrutinized part of the world. And all of the things you're discussing won't even make it to the front end of anything anywhere. Stores won't be able to sell the exclamation product if we start getting the rest of the agricultural world, whoever that might be, right, from a FDA, whatever, all the way down, depending on how this goes out. There's a lot, but again, back to the consumer hat that I'm trying to wear here, dude. I gotta know. I gotta
just
know.
Let us. Let us know, right? Like, just let me know. I can take on the risk.
Food recalls for meat. You put it out for fucking, you know what I mean? Kids' toys that can choke on. Come on. But the point of that is that it's not a federal thing. So it is a state level, and do states get involved? And to your point, what is jurisdiction? What can we say? Where can we go? How much can we tell people? So yeah, I mean, as a consumer, yeah, you want to know your shit's been fucked up. You want to know that. And to your point, as long as I've been doing it, the second it hits my lung, I'm like, okay, this is done wrong. And this is not good for whatever. There's a multitude of reasons, right? As you know. But Carl, the long-term effects, the study goes back to the same problem, right? You can't do large-scale testing at a level because of the federal illegality, right? So, and I'm sure someone like Jeff, I'm hoping someone like him, second it's federally legal, can start mass producing these things, you know, or the Cannabis Coalition. Those guys are doing some really cool shit about smokability and all the things that are going on there. But I don't think, to your point, we're trying to measure that specific metric point, which to me, I'm not really interested. Shouldn't say that. I'm less interested in your terps. I'm more interested in your cleanliness. You know?
Well, then you know what? Come down, visit the dispensary. You'll see at least one of the gardens and see how clean it is. So that's actually.
And Trade Roots does not buy the exclamation product, as you said. That is not a part of how you do it. And as a buyer, you are able to see that, but you think it should be transparent to us, the consumer. And I wonder how the fuck it isn't.
So I will tell you, we tried to have the Nevada Radura language put into this omnibus thing that's trying to get pushed through, and a politically connected outdoor farmer in Mass got it shut down. This gentleman's a friend and a good dude, and I get it, that this is, hurts his business. But, I guess if we take this and also the hemp boys into the whole thing,
right?
This is free riding, right? Like, it's the concept of the consumer doesn't know the difference. So one of the things that Jeff discovered with a lot of these hemp beverages is the beverages actually contain almost no THC.
I know. It's all about product labeling. Every single part about it. And so I'm going to just start doing this for content for this page. Dude, and next time I'm in the grocery store, I come across this shit, I am just going to stand in the middle of the grocery store and I'm going to call it out. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to say, I don't give a shit what this label says. It's all because there's a pot leaf on the front. So the mom, so this came up with Joe Hadass on episode 1, where he was like, look, we all thought the moms were going to give up the box wine and head into the dispensary. But they're terrified of that shit. They're not comfortable. The security guard, the this, the that, the glass, the IDs, they're scared to death. But you know where they always are? Not what he meant, but, shopping, grocery stores, out in the world, doing things, living. If she's walking the grocery store looking for liquor and she sees a pot leaf, she's not checking the label. She's not scanning it to know its ingredients. She's taking it, she's putting it in her cart. She's assuming that whatever she thinks is going to happen is going to happen. And that's the consumer education. Carl, we need to do better at consumer education. And that we're hoping this show does that. We blast it everywhere for that purpose, because that's who I'm in it for. I want people in the business to talk about what consumers should be looking for. And this conversation, people, if you don't want to admit your remediation policies, what else are you hiding? I can't stress it enough from a transparent business perspective. That's scary to me that is not public information. Carl?
Well, it's the conversations I've had with the outdoor grows who, because Mass is at least Eastern Mass is at sea level, and most things need to be remediated. Given Mass, also Massachusetts has some of the most stringent testing standards in the country, and some of those aren't unfair, including total microbial load, so the farmers can't use beneficial microbes. Like, there's things that definitely need to be changed, but the concept of, like, even going back to the hemp stuff, right? Like, this, when Mitch McConnell and the original Farm Bill, this had nothing to do with getting whacked out on whatever, like, some of these synthetic.
It wasn't about using the psychotropic side of it. It was about the industry part of it.
Fiber.
It was about trying to make things better with concrete, paper, whatever you want to talk about. That was the point.
Yep. And so, like, all of this, cool. You're exploiting a loophole.
Yeah.
But
congratulations.
But these, and they're guys, as far as I know, so I'm using that, but like they're pretending like they're fighting for freedom. It's like, you guys were selling cell phone cases in the mall a year ago. Like, relax. Like, you're exploiting a loophole, cool.
Yeah.
But that loophole will get closed. Or maybe it won't, and maybe the license entities are the sucker and this is going to get all blown up. But what we do know is in Massachusetts now, you can't sell the stuff anymore. And you know, Jesse reached out to the Wareham police and the Board of Health to get it banned in Wareham, and then that sort of went up the state, and now it's banned in the state. So we've got something there. And what's interesting is the companies that have taken the dual path approach, right? And some of the, like, talking to other owners, there's a lot of kind of fuck you in there. Right? Like, hey, we helped you build this licensed brand and now you're selling it across the street untaxed for cheaper.
Yeah.
And there are not a lot in mass, but there are a number of brands in mass that are doing this. And, you know, we made a corporate decision that we won't support them anymore, even though we helped. I mean, there's one brand that we were their number one store, and now we won't sell them because they chose to do this thing. So, you know, it is the same plan. I mean, the definition between hemp and cannabis is a government definition at 0.3%. I believe
it's 0.5% percentage that was invented by someone who doesn't grow weed. So it's simple as that. And again, let's not lose sight of the fact that we are still talking about inept government, right? So of course they get the Farm Bill wrong. Of course they don't see it as that. This is the history of who we are now. God forbid we try and go back and revision any of it or change any of it or try to do better on it. But that's the reality, is that a loophole was found. I applaud everyone's loophole. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm a hustler, baby. I got no problem with loopholes. But guess what?
But don't clutch your pearls. Like, if I get loophole, awesome. Exploit it when the loophole shuts, but don't pretend.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
don't act like you're out here being persecuted because you can no longer exploit a loophole, dude. That just isn't it. I'm sorry. And I watch the arguments again. Yes, this isn't my industry, but, you know, and I'm also not a parent, so I don't tend to comment on parent type things, but I've been in the background of cannabis for a long time. I'm going to comment on it because it's fucked up. It's not how we run businesses. And the second a loophole gets caught and gets closed, that's what happens. Happens in the car business all the time. Every single month of my life, there's some other loophole. People are like, did you know we could do this? I mean, an entire internet brand came to the car business and states started to rewrite legislation to get rid of them because they're in bed with franchise car dealers. So this isn't like new. I know everyone in cannabis thinks everything that's happening is like the first time it's ever happened and it's not fair and it's all because it is us. Dude, this is fucking America. So if you just got here, welcome. And, you know, obviously, good luck. But the reality is that as people, we have the right to choose what we want to do. And the loophole is only good for as long as it's there. And you got to be able to find the next hustle, baby. That's how it works. So yeah, Carl, I've been wanting to talk to you about this. And I've been, you know, at first I was like, do I really want to bring this up? Do I really want to talk to this? Because do I need people to start being shitty to either you, me, the idea, the concept? But at the end of the day, I don't really care. This is an honest discussion between a man who paid probably over 6 figures worth of cash to get to his point of where he is easily for permits and everything else. That's an honest point. And I'm a consumer. And I think it's confusing in a non-legal state, in a prohibition state where it should be clear as day that this can't be on the shelves. You can't even fuck with this. Nothing about that. That's what we're headed towards. Okay. And so I'm sorry, anyone on the hemp side, like, I'm a cannabis kid, so I don't get the hemp thing. And I won't. I've had people send me free product. I've had people send me pre-rolls. I don't get it. It all is not good. I get headache. It doesn't make sense to me. So from a consumer perspective, you should all avoid it anyways. It's like I tell people, like, I'm going to do Molly. Like, no, take acid or smoke weed. Don't kill your other brain like that. But at the end of the day, if you want to get high, get high. And if you live in a legal state, most of us are bordered by plenty of legal states. So go find something. But Carl, let me ask you to close this out. What do you think how can we protect the consumer? Is it about federal? Is it about better state? How do we protect the consumer?
So this is a callback to a conversation I had at lunch.
Okay.
And I was talking with my friend Jeremy Bromberg, who has been a CEO, a COO of a bunch of cannabis companies in Mass, and a brilliant individual. And he was talking about the commission and our regulator, right? And he's like, if you ask the average employee of that commission what their job was, they would say it's to enforce the regulations and check the boxes and do all of that. And he's like, but the real mission of the commission should be to protect the consumers and the Commonwealth, right? Like that's what that should be. So, I take a look at what our commission, and I can only speak for Mass, right? Like that's
no, I can speak for all of them. They all suck for the most part. Okay. I've had people on the show from Michigan, Colorado, you name it. New Mexico's a fucking dumpster fire. They all have so many issues because you are asking people who are typically governmental people to start having an opinion on something that they probably know very, very little about. Again, Kim Stuck will tell you she didn't know shit about cannabis when someone told her she had to start writing legislation about it. So at the end of the day, we're all, again, cannabis, we feel like we have to reinvent the wheel. Like we can't just go find something that was working in another industry and God forbid we apply it to ours. But in this case, legislatively speaking, yeah, we can go down this road. These commissions are, I don't know, they just seem like jokes, Carl. And I know you have to deal with them. I'm not trying to get you to comment or put yourself in any weird place, but they just seem like a good idea that's poorly executed, I guess, is how I see
it. Maybe softly agree, and only because I know the commission watches.
Sure, no, I get it. I get it. I see you all over the place. I know that you are a man of many positions and many political pieces, and so I have no problem avoiding.
What I will say is this: I don't envy, and I've been and I will thank Jesse publicly for being a recovering cannabis criminal, because it allows us to be in rooms that normally a company of our size wouldn't get into. I don't envy the commission for their job.
No.
Yeah. That being said, I think, so one of the things, let me take this away from the commission. One of the things, like dealing with like attorneys, right?
Yeah.
They'll give me all of the risks. It's like, all right, tell me what my real risk is.
Yeah.
What do we really?
I just had this conversation.
I know there's all of this shit out here, but like, what are we really worried about, right? Like, let's talk about that. And with the commission, like, okay, what are we really worried about?
Yep.
Are we worried about that I have a lock and a camera on the front door that in case a child who happens to be wandering around our industrial park where our store is, because children wander around industrial parks, happens to come into our store, stick their head through the security window, sees the plant and gets hooked on heroin? Like, is that a real risk, or is that like, is maybe
like a made up lawyer risk? Yeah, I agree.
Or is maybe the fact that there's product potentially being brought in from outside of the state and being smuggled into the system, that's untested and all of that, is that a real risk? Or maybe radiated product that there's no testing, like that kind of stuff. So yeah.
These are real problems, Carl. These are real problems, dude. The people wandering into your industrial park is just not on the list. And yeah, I always tell my lawyer, like, bro, you don't need to up the billing here. Like, just get to the point. You're giving me all these examples. He just gave me one on a lend opportunity we had. He's like, Sean, you have all of, I'm like, dude, come on. Every time we talk about this, you give me the same, you know, the business I'm in. I know the business you're in. Can we please move on? What am I really afraid of? And then he'll go, you should be really afraid of this. And I go, I am. Thank you. I'm good. Let's move on. And that's, you have to have an appetite, right? You have to be able to know how far you want to push things. Carl, as we close this out, what do you see? Actually, I don't even really, that's not even, if I get into this, we're going to go for another hour. So Carl, the traditional way we close this show is, what is your favorite way to consume, Carl? Today, right now, how does Carl consume?
So, favorite way or today? So, today I have switched to flower. Before that, I was, again, saying that we produce the second best live resin in the state. Same quality, less scale, but in there.
That's
and
a
we
callback
also
to part one, people. So if you missed part one, go back and watch it. You owe it to yourself to know what he meant. So, go ahead.
but also we were the first in the state ever to do collaborations with other cultivators.
Yeah.
So
it's cool.
So I get QA QC samples and all of that. So concentrates were my favorite. And then I broke my terp slurper, and just being cheap, couldn't. Just another $300. So I switched to flower, and when you're consuming concentrates a lot and then make the switch back to flower, a little joint gets you really fucking high. So I'm enjoying that wonderfully. Sean, what's yours?
My favorite is always flower. I've never really gone away from it. I like to put the little bit of the wax, on the flower here once in a while. Get them a little crazy, but I'm a pretty heavy microdoser, so I don't tend to mix streams a lot. I do like to have one carry the other, but that is probably more where I live, if I'm being honest with you. But I'm a flower kid through and through. And I was a vape guy for like a really small period of time, only from a concept of public acceptability and usage was the only reason of it. As a matter of fact, a buddy of mine just showed me a picture recently. We went to we're big Blackhawks fans. We went to all 3 Stanley Cups, and there's a picture of me walking down the middle of the United Center after they win with just a huge puff coming out of my mouth. And I thought, that's why I did it. That's why I was involved in the vape movement. But the problem I had, Carl, is it didn't sit in the brain well long term. It got foggy. It was one of those things I never really thought I'd realize before from a consumption perspective. But because I had been doing it so long one way and I switched, being a data nerd, I was able to measure those and say, I just don't feel right, and I got to go. And as soon as I left and went back, all those feelings dissipated. So I'm an avoid vape kid. Sorry to everybody that might think. Carl, man, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for turning the tables on me here at the end. This was great. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate everyone watching. We also greatly appreciate our man, Damian Solomon, King Solomon Nutrients. Guys, if you haven't checked it out, head over to ksolomonag.com. Figure out why they have the best low-cost 2-part system running in the game. Home grow, big time grow, dude. If you don't follow this guy on LinkedIn, you should. The grows he goes to, he's all over Europe. He's everywhere. The grows he goes to are like mind-blowing. You should watch it, see what he does, see his product. And as always, the goal of this show, as we hope is the goal of everyone watching, remove the stigma, uplift the plant. As always, a call out to our man, Dustin from Fat Nugs. Thanks for the idea, bud. Always appreciate it. Carl, thanks a lot, dude. Everyone, have a great week, and we will see you next time.